I'm Cary Stough, and this piece is The Ear of and Other. 11:5:20. One can walk to recalibrate the body's proximity to that which we would once prefer to refer to as the personological stupidity plane, but would rather classify for the purposes of this non-argument as the axiological stupidity axis, or axle. That which the form conditions to auto-repeat on the basis of global energies, politics. The face is a horror, only because, like the haunted mansion, it announces itself in name, having eyes and a pure wall of sky against which to make dead. But the face is none other than the pinion of a refrain when allegedly attracts, screen of totalizable affects. Material locus, that which meaning twitches. Initially struck by the amorphous leaning face of the beloved, one of the love relation's known regularities becomes making and unmaking, preserving in its infinitude the face as a backboard of semio energies. But we talk too. While walking a forest trail, I struggle to grasp her face out of the tangle of branch attention, angle of sky intention, and the body, hers, dematerializes according to the mandate of evolutions, that which is pounded out and produced. And so in a way, I'm alone with myself, and a complex of cause and effect so outside of me, it's like watching the contents of a fairground from a nearby hill. Yet another frame in which someone stands on a hill apart and plays brass, I think, later as we pass by it in a park. Yet another hill between burials, mounting it, as they say, at the base of the mausoleum, I think, yearning a burrito overlooking Lovecraft's grave. Trial another trail. Grasping the face by the body, I feel less of myself than a flickering of doubt and release that the thought-struck beautiful moment had ever even effectively occurred. Though I have the diluted version, washed in future, in memory to somewhat prove it. Babson's Boulders, Gloucester, Massachusetts, Dogtown. Conversation takes turns in the register of tour guide, tours, lovers, and bodies, each with its own motor, its own bladder, attempting to take hold of this morning. We'd followed only tentative directions and made it, as we are coming to do anywhere, just to be there, and often enough. Words we came across, words on the boulders carved and painted black, phrases such as lack of hard work breeds lack of morals, and spiritual power. Often enough, we'd walk around the perimeter of one of these structures only to realize it was just another boulder, uninducted into history, though by some evaluative capacity we had known we shared, worth more to us in its denial of reciprocity, as authentic as ice. As we rounded a gladed portion of the trail, an older couple emerged saying, "Did you find any?" Beyond time. Memoirs are a fairly recent thing for me, and I'm still trying it out. So I would say that the initial reason I write memoirs is a sort of experimentation in form. I am a poet, and I'm educated as a poet. I've written poetry for a long time, and I kind of wanted another form to work in, to try to stretch out my sentences, and I ended up having a really fun time doing this, writing memoir, partly because it was a way to bring split-second experiences of my life onto the page in a way that I had never done before. It's not poetry, so I'm not using my impulse to use metaphor is not there. My impulse to make things unneedingly surreal isn't there anymore. So memoir is both a challenge and as I said, sort of fun experimentation that I think by even just doing makes me a better writer. So this piece, which is one of among a few pieces like this that I put into a manuscript tentatively titled Aim Down Sight, which are all reading diaries, or diaries of me reading certain chapters of books or certain books, but also a diary of my experiences. This one is a combination of a reading diary, particularly the chapter of Deleuze-Guattari's book, 1,000 Plateaus, titled Year Zero Faciality. And it's a travelogue primarily to the Cape Ann region of Massachusetts and Dogtown, which is in Gloucester, Massachusetts, which is a sort of mythological storied forest area that houses, among other things, these big Depression era millionaire-funded art projects by this guy named William Babson, who was very hated in his day. He put all these boulders in the forest, carved with these paltry, moralizing sentiments on the side. As artwork, they lie at the intersection between wonder and annoyance. This piece, though, is also really a record of me falling in love. Something that happens in that experience is that the person that you're falling in love with kind of develops from love at first sight stage to a greater familiarity. And I think that is oftentimes as destabilizing as that initial love strike. And so that's a lot what this piece is about. More about the Deleuze-Guattari chapter. Part of that, the part of your body that is most familiar to someone when you're falling in love with them is the face. It's so intimate, and yet it's one of the most utilized organs of the body. As such, it's victim to the most sort of like awful tendencies because it's so open. This process happens consciously and unconsciously, and it's kind of like, where are the ethics of that? Yeah, and then I should probably say that this is also a pandemic diary. So it was, the section that I read was from 11/5/2020, November 5th, 2020, which is a very important date in America. In November, in Massachusetts, around that time, in America, things had kind of felt like they were paused. Many of us were back to work, though not a lot of us had been taking many trips or small day trips, which were allowed, but kind of looked down upon by certain, people and moralists. To me, that sort of process of falling in love neglected all of those laws, and I wanted to write about that. Right, so when I started writing memoir, I was also moving away from writing things down on paper, though I do still carry a notebook with me, and I still take a lot of notes in my notebooks. Part of me writing part of these memoirs being in diary form was that I wanted to write it whenever I could. And so the object that I have on my body more than my notebook is my cell phone. And so I started writing this on my phone, on Google Docs. And what that did is I kind of wrote in a scroll. I rarely go back and add things into certain sections. I kind of write things as they're occurring, or take notes as they're occurring, and the piece just builds and builds. I rarely know where something will end. I rarely knew where this piece would end up. I thought that kind of honored the work of memoir as like a processing of experience. Compared to the other diary memoirs I've written, this one seemed the close to crumbling apart every time I came back to it. I'm not sure why, but I didn't do anything different. The initial stage, the lived experience stage, where I was living these experiences and taking notes on them, was about a month and a half. And then the editing process was probably another 2 to 3 months, which is just kind of like making sure the sentences are sharp, and cutting a lot of things. Sure. I would say maybe the biggest thing is to be a reader of memoir, and know what other writers have done and are doing. Memoir is such a heavily marketed form of writing. So, there are a lot of really standard memoirs. There are a lot of non-standard memoirs. But in all of them, there is the onus that on the reader to sort of balance their own experiences with the experiences that you, the writer, are giving them in this piece. And it might be, so to speak, the author's duty to sort of indulge that and encourage the reader to have to sort of comprehend these experiences that you're having and you're putting down on paper. But I think that there's also a lot to say for resisting that and putting things in memoir that a reader would have to really work at and maybe is irreducible to their experience. The other thing I would say is to take trips, as many trips as you can. And that isn't to say that you should travel to other countries or spend a bunch of money. There are very cheap ways to do this. It's mainly just going someplace that might not even have occurred to you that it had existed before you visited it. I guess just be open to being both bored and amazed by things. Right. Fortunately for me, there's a lot of great pieces. Unfortunately, for an answer, it would be very long. But in short, I especially with these pieces, the pieces that I write, I'm thinking of the works of Dodie Bellamy, Banu Kapil, Renee Gladman. All of them take bits of narrative life and kind of have a poetic treatment to it. And it's, I wouldn't say it's fragmented, but they have a way of writing that seems like they're going against the entire history of what memoir is. I like some older writers too, Michelle Lurie and Flora Scott Maxwell. But I think like a specific recent piece that I come back to a lot, and I think you can see the influence of in all of my work, is a piece titled Haul, H-A-U-L, by Kylan Rice in Rivulet Journal. It's also a travelogue, and it brings thinkers like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau as kind of companions on this trip for the author. The author, who's taking a trip with someone who seems to be either a friend, a partner, or a companion. But at the formal level of this piece, it's really kind of just a collection of road observations they see on the road. Like at the beginning, it's just a description of like a semi-truck trailer going by, and that's very vivid to me. And then the rest of the piece is sort of like snippets of car conversation, the kind of conversation you have with people that you don't know or you do know well, but you realize that you're both just trying to get to this place. You're on a trip. And I thought that was a very interesting form for a memoir to take. And hopefully I can copy that. Great. I want to give a shout out to my favorite poet of all time. His name is Trey Jordan Harris. He's very Googleable, and I hope everybody reads him.